Good afternoon. Thank you for everyone joining us this afternoon. My name is Rhonda Covera. I'll be presenting the webinar on behalf of Visual Workplace today. This webinar is one of 6 webinars that we offer to one each month, typically depending on holiday schedules. It's usually the first Tuesday of every month. And so today we're going to be talking about smart floors, and we're going to be talking about color coding. That always seems to be an area that we get a lot of questions with. So I want to just sort out some of the, talk about some different color coding standards that exist in a lot of workplaces and give you some tools and some products that you might be able to use to create that smart floor environment in your workplace. So again, my name is Rhonda Covera. I'm here with Mark Thompson. He's driving things on the back end.
Hello, everyone.
And so as we step through the webinar today, Mark is going to handle any questions that you might have. Mark, if you can give me a quick tutorial on how to submit questions, because we're going to handle those questions at the end of the webinar. So you're welcome to submit those throughout the webinar as you think of them.
No problem, guys. So here's what you're going to do. Over on the right-hand side, you should see a control panel, so to speak, maybe at the top of the screen, depending on your viewing preference. But when you mouse over that, you'll see that there is a section there that has a chat or a question section. Feel free to ask in either one of those spots. I'll be monitoring both areas throughout the presentation.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And again, submit some questions as you're thinking of them, and we'll certainly cover those at the end. Today's webinar is going to last about 40 minutes, just to kind of give you a pulse as you're planning out your afternoon for today. And what we're going to do is step you through, as I mentioned, the Smart Floors content for this webinar. But just real quick, I want to kind of make sure we're moving here. I'm not. Oh, here we go. Sorry, my mouse was a little sleepy. But again, as I mentioned, this is the overview of the Visual Management webinar series that we offer. Today, as you can see, the title at the bottom, that's what we're going to be talking about. And then our next webinar is going to be first week in December, same time. And we're going to be talking about 5S facilitator guides, and we're going to give you some suggestions and some things to help improve your 5S implementation if you're well into it or if you're just getting started. So again, Mark will be sending out email reminders in a couple of weeks. So please feel free to sign up and forward the invitation to anyone in your network as well. Okay, so just to get started briefly and give you a little bit of background, in case this is your first time attending one of our webinars, Visual Workplace has been in business for over 20 years now and focusing on visual communication, 5S support, and workplace organization. And so one of our main products is our mobile in-house sign shop that you see here on the left. And that particular sign shop is a tool that a lot of companies use to create signage internally themselves. If you have the resources and you have the need, you can save a tremendous amount of money by doing that. And again, we've got some webinars that center around that product as well that you're welcome to jump in on. We also do a lot of customization as far as signage and banners and dry erase boards, tool shadow boards, lots of things happening there with custom signage. And then we've got some do-it-yourself products that floor tapes and some of those things that we're going to talk about today. So what we've really tried to do is give our customers an opportunity to do some things themselves when they have the resources and the capacity. And when you find yourself, stuck in needing visual communication and some resources, you can certainly lean on us as well, and we'll help you step through that. All right, so we're going to get into the webinar for today. And really what we're going to do is we're going to first talk about color coding and how to create that smart floor environment using color. And there's some different categories that we can talk about with regards to color coding as we step through this. Then I'm going to give you some tips for some efficient floor control. And then we're going to talk about some tools, and that'll wrap up the webinar for today. So stepping into color coding, you may not realize it, but there are many different types of color codes in our daily life that help us navigate efficiently when we go from place to place, as we see, in airports and roadways and different things. But what's important to understand is that color codes are also very useful in our workplaces to help us reinforce standards. They help us to eliminate time spent searching, and ultimately they help us to increase productivity by utilizing some of those color codes. I'm often asked if there are any standards for color coding in that manufacturing environment as a whole. And the answer is both yes and no. And so I'm going to give you some reasons why, I feel that is a both yes and no answer to that question. So what I really like to take time to point out is I feel that there are three distinct types of color codes that exist in a workplace. So there's not just one rule of thumb for color coding in a manufacturing environment. So basically, we talk about color coding from a process standpoint, and I'm going to give you some examples of that. We all are very familiar with the color coding standards for safety. Those are established by, third-party organizations, and many of us follow that quite rigidly. And then, because we're talking about continuous improvement and lean manufacturing and 5S and, standard work, there are some color coding standards that we can utilize that help us to control and create an organized workplace. So I'm going to give you some ideas behind that as well. So what I first want to do is start by talking about process color codes. And again, there's no standards specific for this, but I want to give you examples in how we use color coding to control our processes. So process color coding standards are primarily used to organize data, as you see here. They help us to communicate priorities, and again, they help us to reinforce standards that we have in our workplace to eliminate errors. They complement, in many cases, the work instructions that we already have in our workplace, but they help us to follow those standards and do what is required of us in a much more efficient way. And again, it also can be seen as a very helpful tool for onboarding and training new employees as well. The underlying goal, though, is to identify normal versus abnormal situations, and that's really why we use color coding as part of our process control. They help us, they're primarily the foundation of all the little mini visual systems that we see in our work, in our daily work every day. And without these standards, we spend a lot of time looking for things, and we waste a lot of motion. There's a lot of rework, and so we're always looking for ways to communicate standards via color code. As you see here, this center image that you see, this is just a simple work order request board. And what they've done here is they've used color to help establish priority. We're not changing the work order system, but we're just organizing data and helping to communicate priorities that happen from each one of these. So ultimately, we want to eliminate waste in all the non-value-added work that happens in our daily lives. And we can do this by associating color with some of our processes. So I'm going to give you another couple of examples. And again, there's no right or wrong answers to how you personally implement color coding and process control. My biggest suggestion is to look for opportunities to integrate it, and because I think that's where you're going to find a lot of improvement in productivity and quality. So for this example, we were at a facility, and it was a steel plant, and so everyone, as part of their personal protective equipment requirements, we had to wear hard hats. And what they were finding is, even when drivers were delivering materials, as they came into the facility, they were required to place a hard hat on. What was happening is, inadvertently or intentionally, one of the two, these hard hats were just walking away, and they're very expensive. And so drivers, when they were stopping in, were, walking away with these hard hats, and it was a very costly expenditure. So what they did is they created a color code for wearing hard hats. And what they did immediately is to assign the pink hard hats to visitors and drivers who were delivering material. Well, lo and behold, not too many people walked away with pink hard hats, especially big burly guys. So in and of itself, just by making a slight change like that, they created a cost reduction in their MRO items, not having to replace hard hats. The other benefit is, as you see here, they identified new employees with blue hard hats. Well, that really made that onboarding process a little bit easier. It was easy for others to identify new employees, to welcome them, and then also to pay attention to maybe processes that they might be working on and making sure that they were doing them properly. So again, it's just, it's silly, but again, this is where you can use color to maybe kill a couple of birds with one stone. Next, this is just a real simple application, but sometimes the simplicity of some of the systems we have are the best ones. And simply, for this particular plant, it was an injection molding facility, and they just simply needed a way. They were having a problem in separating scrap and non-conforming material. And so just by adding some color and some bins that were clearly identified, it really helped reduce some of their containment issues with the customer. So that just kind of gives you, just at a real light level, some examples of how we can use color related to process control. And really what we're trying to do is reinforce standards that already exist, but for whatever reason, we may not be following them the way that we should. And we can certainly find opportunities to improve our standard work by communicating using color. Next, I want to talk about safety color codes. And again, this is something that many of us are familiar with. Safety standards for many industries, including manufacturing, warehousing, healthcare, transportation, are created by regulatory agencies. And for many of us, that might be OSHA or ANSI. And so OSHA has some recommendations for color related to safety. And those are very important to follow. Again, ANSI has very similar recommendations. And color is an important part of these standards, and it's designed to be commonly recognized. And that's really the most important factor, is that we use standard colors for identifying hazards or danger areas, and it's designed to keep our employees safe. Now, for you, these standards already exist. It's not anything that you have to reinvent. And again, I gave you a couple of resources here for the ANSI standard, but again, we want to be able to look at these standards and establish, utilize them in a very standard way throughout our facility. And so here I'm just sharing with you some of the standards set specifically by ANSI for identifying safety messages in our workplace. And if you have any questions, ANSI and OSHA are great places to lean on for trying to identify when to use certain colors. But again, these are developed. We don't have to figure these out ourselves. They're well documented. But again, it's important to recognize that there are color standards for safety in our workplace. And it's okay, and this is where I get a lot of confusion from folks in the questions that they ask. It's like, well, how do safety standards relate to what you were just talking about with regards to process or workplace organization? The answer is they can all exist together. We want to try and keep things as simple as possible, because I've been in facilities where their color coding is so complicated, nobody knows what's to do, and it becomes paralyzing. So what you really want to just focus on is recognizing that we have standards for safety, for color coding, and we can utilize color coding at a process level for reinforcing standards. And those two things can happen simultaneously in the same facility. Next, we want to talk about workplace organization. And for many of you, you might be identifying where things belong in your workplace, and you want to associate color with that. And so creating a universal system for how things are identified and where they're located in your facility can be very advantageous. They may include things like we mentioned here, floor markings. You may want to create standards for signage that you're placing in your facility. And especially for our customers, this is something that we really try and reinforce. If you're using one of our sign shops in your facility, you absolutely want to take the time to develop some standards for signage and color, because you don't want a hodgepodge mess of visual communication that nobody's paying attention to. Other areas that you can utilize color for organizing your workplace would be with labels and locators for objects or different types of material in your facility. In this next slide, this is really where I think a lot of the questions come from with regard to, what color coding standards do I use for organizing my workplace? And really, there's no set standards. What you see here, this is a good starting point. And, it's nice to start and then adapt your standards to your processes and the things that happen specifically. You may have a few less than this. You may have a few more than this, depending on your system and your processes in your facility. So there's no right or wrong answer. I encourage you to establish some standards for organizing your workplace and making sure that it's simple and effective, because we don't want to create standards just to create standards. One thing I apologize, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the webinar, this webinar will be available to everyone that attended. So if you're wanting to share some of the information that you're finding here, we will send you a link to a landing page, and on that landing page, you'll be able to view this presentation as you're seeing today. You'll also be able to download the actual PowerPoint presentation. So if you want to incorporate some of this material into your training materials, you're welcome to do that. And we'll send that to you. You'll probably receive that from our team probably on Monday. It usually takes us a day or so to get everything, the landing page all set and squared away. So again, I didn't want anybody to think that they wouldn't have access to this information afterwards. All right, so going back to our color coding standards, here are a couple of examples that some of our customers have used. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. You just need to make it efficient for yourself. You can see the image on the right. They went as far to create standards for signage because they did have one of our sign shops. And then they also created standards for floor markings and different things. The one on the right is a little bit more generic and can be applied across the board. So you just have to find what makes the most sense for you. And again, an example here of signage. This is, you can see that this sign is made out of green. It's related to inventory control. And so, that's probably a raw material or maybe a finished goods material. Again, so they're using that color to draw attention to that. And same with marking items on the floor, just using the color coding standards that you have set up. So that takes us through, excuse me, the three different types of color coding standards that, in my opinion, exist in many workplaces. And I think it's just helpful for you to recognize that they exist. They can all work together. It is important to develop standards where you can. And, you're probably not going to have any standards for process control, because that's just going to, it's just going to be applicable where possible. We do have standards for safety with relationship to color, and if you're so inspired, you can set your standards for organizing your workplace and assigning color. So again, just to give you some feedback and some ideas. So now I'm going to step through some tips for effective floor control. Just some things that you might find useful. We've had a couple of facilities that are using the process walk or a daily Gemba walk, and what they've done is they've mapped out that path or that route per se, and they've used floor decals and floor graphics to really shine a light on that. And so again, it just brings some emphasis and a little bit of marketing to those types of continuous improvement activities. As far as creating effective smart floor environments, I encourage you to use professional signage whenever you can. As I mentioned, we have a sign shop that could allow you to do it yourself if you'd like, or we can help you as well. But you can see just here in this example how the effectiveness and the credibility that comes from professional-looking signage. Again, another example of using color coding. Again, this is more related to process. This particular facility used carts to move products from operation to operation, and they wanted to make sure that there was no, they didn't have any issues with contaminating one type of process with another, so they went all out and decked out their carts to make sure it was very visible from a process standpoint which carts were supposed to be used to transfer materials within their facility. And this next one, I like this because just examples of using, we want to create safe work environments, and if you have a situation where you have a process that requires an operator to be in a certain place, you may want to reinforce that standard by putting some footprints on the floor. And it could be footprints, again, you'll see if you're looking for ways to put symbols on the floor and mark where different things go, you can do that by, we do have a lot of examples of different types of symbols in our catalog, or things that you can do with your sign shop. Again, I wanted to show this as a color coding opportunity that is used for inventory control. Again, this is the I believe these are the Creeform racks, possibly. And what they did is they used different color of material on the rack to identify reorder points. So material handlers could very easily, at a glance, replenish material just by looking and not having to count or stop and count as they're moving through the facility for reorders. Next, if you're working on a 5S, in shining a light on your red tag areas and making sure that people are bringing them there, identifying them with the proper tags, and then most importantly, dispositioning that material in a timely manner can be very helpful. Another example of color coding with relationship to inventory control, both images that you see here, what they did is they simply took floor tape and they used that to create reorder points both on workbenches and in storage racks. So again, you can get creative in how you use color, and again, inventory control and color coding can be a very helpful tool in eliminating stock outages and also making sure that we don't have any lost production time. Next one is similar to what we were looking at earlier. Again, using totes and bins to color code what materials need to be placed where. And so again, we don't have quality control issues with the parts we're sending to our customers. Here we have examples, again, wanting to make sure that we error-proof where things belong. And you can see here they both, instead of putting words on the floor, a combination of words, they've also put symbols so that people can very quickly understand what is supposed to happen. And in both of these situations, we have ladders and material handling equipment that needs to go in a certain spot. And we want to reinforce where those belong, and those types of graphics with your identification with floor tape can also help control behavior and direct behavior. Next, we're going to talk about some products that you might find useful for creating that smart floor environment. We're going to start first with some of the floor products, the floor tapes. And so we've got some different options for you. Floor tapes being probably the one product that I think most of us use most often. We have a new floor tape that just was released a few months ago. It's a high-performance tape, and it is it's thicker than our standard floor mark. So if you've used our floor tape in the past, this is going to be thicker and have a much more aggressive adhesive, designed for high traffic areas where our standard floor mark is a product that works very well in maybe inside of a work cell and more for foot traffic. But what's nice about this product is it has a low profile, and you're going to find very expensive tapes in the marketplace ranging from, $100 and up. This is not going to be in that price range. A 2-inch roll of our high-performance tape starts at $65. So it's designed to be thicker than our standard, which is much thinner, but it gives you some flexibility in using different types of tape in different areas of your plant and not having a one-size-fits-all. So again, if you're interested in getting some samples and you'd like to try the high performance, I get asked all the time, well, is it going to work on my floor? I have no idea. It's working really well for many of our customers in the high traffic areas. So what I would suggest is, request a sample. We'll send it to you and you can try it before you buy it. Next, we're going to, again, we've got some other tapes that we have available if you're looking for some different applications, both with stripe, reflective, glow. So you've got lots of options for making sure that you don't overspend and use a product that is overkill in an area, and you can balance the needs that you have with the different products that are available. We talked a little bit about floor symbols. Here's examples of some of the symbols that we do have available. We have clear covers, so if you want to create some added durability, you can put some covers over the tops of these. And again, sometimes folks find these are more useful to use because they take less labor to install and they're easier to replace. So it's really just a matter of personal preference. But you can do some different things with the floor symbols and still get a very impactful visual presentation on where things belong and making sure they get back to their original location. Here we have, this is one of our customers. They were using these floor symbols exclusively on their floors as opposed to the floor tape. And so what they did is they created a reorder station. So as anyone in the facility needed to come and replace symbols on the floor that they've gotten pulled up or just looking shabby over time, they could come to this location, grab what they needed, and off they went. So again, it was a process that helped them become more efficient. We're going to talk next a little bit about some of the floor decals. And these are printed decals. These are products that we make for you. We will actually print, and we use, on these decals, we use the same adhesive that we use on our high-performance tape. And so it's designed to last a very long time. And again, we've got some standard messages on the floor decals, different colors. We can recreate things that you may already have in your facility that you may need more of. But again, the thing to remember is we can customize any message you want on the decals, and it's not going to cost you anything more. Everything is based on size. So if you need to change the message, no problem. You're not going to pay more for that. And here in this next example, you can see not only did we change the message, but we changed the size of the floor decals. So we can, again, we can create a lot of custom floor decals to help communicate, and really helping to keep everybody safe in your facility is primarily what we see tremendous use in the floor decals. If you're apprehensive and your floor is, not conducive for things sticking to it, we have some other options for you. As far as communicating and creating visual communication on the floor. First would be the floor stencils. And again, we have some standard messages in our catalog and online, but we can customize and put your own text. if you have a very specific message or a safety requirement that needs to be met, and you need to actually paint that on the floor as opposed to putting on with an adhesive. So again, opportunities for customization. And then we have a whole host of excuse me, A-frame signs, both, some that can be used for temporary applications and some that you can use and interchange your messages using more of a solid frame. So it gives you an opportunity to look at the different applications in your facility and try to establish those smart floor communications. Again, this is a product, just because we were talking about color in relationship to process control, this is a great product. We've got different ways that you can purchase this product, excuse me, and you can do this by using some roll material that we have if you have a sign shop. We have pre-cut circle dimensions, so if you have some gauges in your facility that you want to just peel and stick, we can pre-cut them for you, or we also sell them in a sheet, and you're welcome to cut them yourself. So lots of options. Again, we try to give you, things that you can do yourself and save some money, and then there are some materials or might be some projects that you might need some help with that we can certainly, you're welcome to lean on us for. So that brings us we actually went through this quite quickly today. So again, just a recap on the visual management series, and then our next upcoming webinar, which will be, I was going to say today was Tuesday. It's going to be on Thursday, December 6th at 2 p.m. Eastern, and Mark will get invitations out to everybody regarding that. And then as I mentioned, we'll send everyone who attended a link to a landing page, and you'll be able to download this presentation. You can hear the audio version. You can also download the PowerPoint if you want to use some of the materials that we had here today and some of, to share with others in your team. I highly encourage it. And then we will have a download where you can, we've got a paper on color coding if you want to share that with others as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mark to see if he's got any questions.
We do have a question. It's from Renee. She had asked a question, and I believe this was during the high performance floor mark section. Does it tear up the floor when you remove it, and how do you remove it?
We're talking the high performance, the high tech.
Yep.
It does come off. It takes a little bit more work to get it off, and you will find that it's going to probably leave somewhat of a residue behind there, because the problem is you want it to stick. So it's hard to formulate an adhesive that sticks as long as you want it to, but comes up when you're ready without any issues. So it is designed to stick much longer than the other. And we do have, if you do find that you have a residue, again, it's hard to know what type of residue it might leave because I can't see the condition of your floors. But we do have an adhesive remover that is amazing. You can find that on our website or in our catalog. We use it. It's just amazing. I use it at home actually for getting sticky stuff off. And it doesn't leave an oily residue either, which is kind of like some of those orange cleaners that you may have used. But this one's great. So that's what I would recommend. Yeah,
it's called Crazy Clean.
Crazy Clean.
And plus, I think she was referring to like being on an actual like cement floor. It's not going to peel up cement.
Oh heavens, no.
Right.
Nope. It's not that sticky.
That is our only question for today.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank you for taking some time out today. Hopefully you've got a few tidbits that you can take back with you. When you registered, if you requested any samples, we'll get those moving towards you next week as well. And in the meantime, you've got my email address. If there's anything, any questions you have, projects that you need, help getting started, please do not hesitate to email us. We coach customers all the time on different projects, and we will certainly help get you started and get you pointed in the right direction. So, again, thank you so much. And so for some of you, I hope you're not like me, but we're getting probably our first blast of snow tomorrow over the weekend here in Michigan. So hopefully some of you are in some sunny, warm places, and you don't have to see that for a while. So anyway, safe travel. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.